A prison is a house of care, a place where none can thrive. A touchstone true to try a friend, a grave for one alive. Sometimes a place of right, sometimes a place of wrong. Sometimes a place of rogues and thieves, and honest men. Among. Inscription on Edinburgh Tolbooth. Early on the following morning, the carriage which had brought Bertram to Hazelwood House was, with his two silent and surly attendants, appointed to convey him to his place of confinement at Portonferry. This building adjoined to the custom house established at that little seaport, and both were situated so close to the sea beach that it was necessary to defend the back part with a large and strong rampart or bulwark of huge stones, disposed in a slope towards the surf, which often reached and broke upon them. The front was surrounded by a high wall, enclosing a small courtyard, within which the miserable inmates of the mansion were occasionally permitted to take exercise and air. The prison was used as a house of correction, and sometimes as a chapel of case to the county jail, which was old, and far from being conveniently situated with reference to the Kippletringan district of the county. MacGuffig, the officer by whom Bertram had at first been apprehended, and who was now in attendance upon him, was keeper of this palace of little ease. He caused the carriage to be drawn close up to the outer gate, and got out himself to summon the warders. The noise of his rap alarmed some 20 or 30 ragged boys, who left off sailing their mimic sloops and frigates in the little pools of salt water left by the receding tide, and hastily crowded round the vehicle to see what luckless being was to be delivered to the prison house out of Glossin's braw new carriage. The door of the courtyard, after the heavy clanking of many chains and bars, was opened by Mrs. MacGuffig, an awful spectacle, being a woman for strength and resolution capable of maintaining order among her riotous inmates, and of administering the discipline of the house, as it was called, during the absence of her husband, or when he chanced to have taken an overdose of the creature. The growling voice of this Amazon, which rivaled in harshness the crashing music of her own bolts and bars, soon dispersed in every direction the little varlets who had thronged around her threshold, and she next addressed her amiable helpmate. "Be sharp, man, and get out the swell, canst thou not?" "Hold your tongue and be d.d., you," answered her loving husband, with two additional epithets of great energy, but which we beg to be excused from repeating. Then, addressing Bertram, "Come, will you get out, my handy lad, or must we lend you a lift?" Bertram came out of the carriage, and, collared by the constable as he put his foot on the ground, was dragged, though he offered no resistance, across the threshold, amid the continued shouts of the little sansculottes, who looked on at such distance as their fear of Mrs. MacGuffig permitted. The instant his foot had crossed the fatal porch, the portress again dropped her chains, drew her bolts, and turning with both hands an immense key, took it from the lock, and thrust it into a huge side pocket of red cloth. Bertram was now in the small court already mentioned. 2 or 3 prisoners were sauntering along the pavement, and deriving as it were a feeling of refreshment from the momentary glimpse with which the opening door had extended their prospect to the other side of a dirty street. Nor can this, he thought, surprising, when it is considered that, unless on such occasions, their view was confined to the grated front of their prison, the high and sable walls of the courtyard, the heaven above them, and the pavement beneath their feet, a sameness of landscape, which, to use the poet's expression, lay like a load on the wearied eye, and had fostered in some a callous and dull misanthropy, in others that sickness of the heart which induces him who is immured already in a living grave, to wish for a sepulchre yet more calm and sequestered. MacGuffig, when they entered the courtyard, suffered Bertram to pause for a minute, and look upon his companions in affliction. When he had cast his eye around, on faces on which guilt, and despondence, and low excess, had fixed their stigma, upon the spendthrift, and the swindler, and the thief, the bankrupt debtor, the moping idiot, and the madman gay, whom a paltry spirit of economy congregated to share this dismal habitation, he felt his heart recoil with inexpressible loathing from enduring the contamination of their society even for a moment. "I hope, sir," he said to the keeper, "you intend to assign me a place of confinement apart?" "And what should I be the better of that?" Why, sir, I can but be detained here a day or two, and it would be very disagreeable to me to mix in the sort of company this place affords. And what do I care for that? Why, then, sir, to speak to your feelings, said Bertram, I shall be willing to make you a handsome compliment for this indulgence. Aye, but when, Captain? When and how? That's the question, or rather, the TWA questions, said the jailer. When I am delivered, and get my remittances from England, answered the prisoner. MacGuffig shook his head incredulously. Why, friend, you do not pretend to believe that I am really a malefactor, said Bertram. Why, I no can, said the fellow, but if you are on the account, ye're a sharp ane, that's the daylight oat. And why do you say I am no sharp one? Why, but a crack-brained greenhorn wad hey let them keep up the siller that ye left at the Gordon Arms, said the constable. Deal fetch me, but I would have held it out o' their whams, asterisk bellies, ye had nae right to be stripped o' your money and sent to jail without a mark to pay your fees, they might have keep it the rest o' the articles for evidence. But why, for a blind bottlehead, did not ye ask the guineas? And I kept winking and nodding a' the time, and the Donnert, asterisk stupid, devil wad never ance look my way. Well, sir, replied Bertram, if I have a title to have that property delivered up to me, I shall apply for it, and there is a good deal more than enough to pay any demand you can set up. I dinna ken a bit about that, said MacGuffig, ye may be here lang enough. And then the giving credit maun be considered in the fees. But, however, as ye do seem to be a chap by common, though my wife says I lose by my good nature, if ye gie me an order for my fees upon that money, I dare say Glosson will make it forthcoming. I'll ken something about an escape from Malengo, and he'll be glad to carry me through, and be neighbor-like. Well, sir, replied Bertram, if I am not furnished in a day or two otherwise, you shall have such an order. Weel, then ye shall be put up like a prince, said MacGuffig. But mark ye me, friend, that we may have nae collishangy, asterisk quarrel, afterhand, these are the fees I always charge a swell that must have his libken to himself 30 shillings a week for lodgings, and a guinea for garnish, half a guinea a week for a single bed, and I dinna get the whole of it, for I must gie half a crown out of it to Donald later that's in for sheep stealing, that should sleep with you by rule, and he'll expect clean stray, and maybe some whiskey beside. So I make little upon that. Well, sir, go on. Then for meat and liquor, ye may have the best, and I never charge a bean 20% our tavern price for pleasing a gentleman that way, and that's little enough for sending in and sending out, and wearing the lassies shoon out. And then if ye're dowie, I will sit why you a glyph, asterisk twinkling, in the evening missile, man, and help ye out why you're bottled. I have drunk mony a glass why Glosson, man, that did you up, though he's a justice now. And then I warrant ye'll be for fire third called nights, or if you want candle, that's an expensive article, for it's against the rules. And now I've telled ye the head articles of the charge, and I dinna think there's muckle mair, though there will I be some odd expenses our in a bune. Well, sir, I must trust to your conscience, if ever you happen to hear of such a thing, I cannot help myself. Nah, sir, answered the cautious jailer, I'll no permit you to be saying that I'm forcing naething upon ye, and ye dinna like the price ye needna take the article. I force no man, I was only explaining what civility was, but if ye like to take the common run of the house, it's a one to me, I'll be saved trouble, that's a d. Nay, my friend, I have, as I suppose you may easily guess, no inclination to dispute your terms upon such a penalty, answered Bertram. Come, show me where I am to be, for I would fain be alone for a little while. Come along then, Captain, said the fellow, with a contortion of visage which he intended to be a smile, and I'll tell you now, to show you that I have a conscience, as ye see 8, d.n me if I charge ye a beun 6pence a day for the freedom of the court, and ye may walk in very near 3 hours a day, and play at pitch and toss and handba, and what not. With this gracious promise, he ushered Bertram into the house, and showed him up a steep and narrow stone staircase, at the top of which was a strong door, clenched with iron and studded with nails. Beyond this door was a narrow passage or gallery, having 3 cells on each side, wretched vaults, with iron bed frames and straw mattresses. But at the farther end was a small apartment, of rather a more decent appearance, that is, having less the air of a place of confinement, since, unless for the large lock and chain upon the door, and the crossed and ponderous stanchions upon the window, it rather resembled the worst inn's worst room. It was designed as a sort of infirmary for prisoners whose state of health required some indulgence, and, in fact, Donald later, Bertram's destined chum, had been just dragged out of one of the 2 beds which it contained, to try whether clean straw and whiskey might not have a better chance to cure his intermitting fever. This process of ejection had been carried into force by Mrs. MacGuffig while her husband parleyed with Bertram in the courtyard, that good lady having a distinct presentiment of the manner in which the treaty must necessarily terminate. Apparently the expulsion had not taken place without some application of the strong hand, for one of the bedposts of a sort of tent bed was broken down, so that the tester and curtains hung forward into the middle of the narrow chamber, like the banner of a chieftain, half sinking amid the confusion of a combat.